Merry meet, welcome to my channel, or welcome back. If you don't know me, I'm Anna, a clinical psychology doctoral candidate. This channel is all about real-life applications to psychology, so if that is something that would be useful for you, go ahead and hit like, subscribe, hit the bell notification button, all that good stuff. Today we're talking about what the literature says on men in Captain Cook culture. As you may or may not know, my dissertation is on the lived experience of college women in Captain Cook culture, and I also have a chapter in my literature review on what I found about men's experience and how that impacts women's experience. It's really interesting. When I was reviewing my dissertation proposal in preparation for this video, I thought, I'm probably gonna have to give a disclaimer that this is obviously not all men in Captain Cook culture. And then I thought, why is that? I didn't give that kind of a disclaimer for all the other videos when I talk about women's experiences, because usually when we're talking about women, it's understood, unspoken, that I'm not talking about all women, I'm talking about the women who participated in these studies. And so of course the same thing applies to men as well. I'm not describing all men, I'm describing men from I think it was 6 or 7 studies, which I will link in the description box, by the way. But I just want to remind you that it's understood that I'm not talking about all people in a specific group. And I shouldn't even have to give this disclaimer because not all men is often just used to silence women talking about their own experiences. So with that said, let's just go into what I found about men's experience in Captain Cook culture. And I do have my trusty proposal right here in front of me, so if I'm reading, sorry about that. I have to look at my notes because it's quite a few pages. So something that was very important in the literature review was that men tend to have different motives for going into hookups than women do. Men actually tend to feel more positively towards casual relationships than women do. Whereas women are more likely to regret these relationships, men are more likely to regret not participating in them. Men are also more likely to initiate these relationships for the physical benefits, whereas women are more likely to initiate them for the possible emotional benefits. Even when men do desire some of the emotional benefits like intimacy and closeness, they may actually feel pressured by external factors to instead only have a casual relationship, to only focus on the physical aspects, which is definitely an aspect of peer pressure that a lot of men feel pressured to conform to the culture, which not only negatively impacts them, but also the women who may also not want that. Men actually report a stronger peer pressure to participate in Captain Cook culture than women tend to. Despite this though, men tend to report much more positive emotional outcomes in response to these relationships, or at worst, mixed emotional responses, whereas for women, usually mixed emotional responses is the best case scenario. Another really important theme regarding men's experience in Captain Cook culture was the idea of performing hetero-masculinity. Hetero-masculinity, in case you don't know, is a specific type of masculinity that is promoted within hegemonic spheres. So things like wanting to compulsively perform your heterosexuality, wanting to compulsively make sure that everyone around you knows that you are attracted to women and that that makes you a man. And part of the way that men try to do this is by these manhood acts, in which they try to constantly remind people that they're attracted to women and that they want casual physical encounters as a way to prove that they are real men. And these are not actually so much about desire for these women as they are for desire for social status among their male peers. So in a way, when you hear locker talk and men talking about, oh, she's so hot and this and that, it's more about them wanting to impress their friends than it is about actually being attracted to that woman. For men, the upward social mobility that casual encounters can afford them often is more important than even the physical gratification of these encounters. Whereas, as we already discussed in a different video, it is the exact opposite for women. For women, it is a real risk in terms of reputation to participate in this. Studies also found that men are socialized to prioritize casual physical encounters, to avoid intimacy and empathy that is generally associated with more long-term relationships, and to collect women as objects through which they can enhance their masculinity. In order for men to bond with each other, they constantly perform their heterosexuality and their masculinity together, constantly reinforcing the idea that to be a man means to be attracted to as many women as possible and to have casual relations with as many women as possible, while also either directly or indirectly ridiculing men who are not attracted to women and women themselves. Because if a man is attracted to another man, then by these guys' definitions, they are not real men to begin with. Meanwhile, men tend to develop these intimate bromances, as they're called, which studies showed sometimes have this unspoken physical component that never really materializes. It's suggested, but it's always a little bit out of reach. And so while they're disparaging men who are open about being attracted to other men, they are actually forming an emotional bond with other men, which they would never do with women. Another way that men perform heteromasculinity is by bragging rights, by bragging about the women that they have captain cooked up with. The objectification of women serves as a bonding ritual for these types of men. They might participate in what's called girl watching in the studies, where they build upon a working consensus of what women are hot and which ones are not hot. They not only rank women based on desirability, but also based on availability. And the more available a woman is physically, the less respectable she is. And one man's physical encounters with another woman can actually affect the entire system of men's status. For example, if one man has an encounter with a really attractive or really respected woman, then he brings up the status of the whole group. Whereas if he has an encounter with someone who is considered unattractive or not respectable, that brings down not only his reputation, but also the whole group's status. And so something that emerges from this girl watching idea is the need to juggle between the double standards that women are held to, along with wanting to boost their own status. Since women are both rewarded and punished for being physically available to men, men have to decide, is it in my best interest to hyperbolize a woman's availability and look how much she wanted me, or is it more in my interest to understate her availability so that she will be more respectable, and therefore I will be more respectable because I had an encounter with her. So if you go the route where you're hyperbolizing a woman's availability, the literature talks about this as describing women as mythical sluts. Essentially, someone who you deem to be so available, so slutty, such a whore, that basically she reaches the level of myth. She doesn't actually exist because you are hyperbolizing her to such an extent. Versus if a man has an experience with a woman that he actually really likes, and he doesn't want to make it seem like she's too available to his friends because he wants her to be respected by them, he has to decide, how much can I divulge that will make me look good, while also not making her look bad in case I want to pursue a relationship with her. So my study is on women's experience in Captain Cook culture, not men's. And so I want to tie this back to how this impacts women in Captain Cook culture. I think a lot of women don't realize the way that men talk about them behind closed doors. And I think that a lot of women are not aware of what the research says and what men are on the record saying about them. The disrespectful ways in which they speak about them, the objectification, the hyperbolization of their behavior. And I can't help but think if more women actually knew what was happening behind closed doors, they would maybe think twice about who they want to engage in these encounters with. Based on the literature that I reviewed, there's no evidence that women objectify men in the way that men objectify women in Captain Cook culture. Some of the women that I interviewed for my study said that they weren't aware that slut shaming still happens, and then some of them did, and they had very concrete experiences of witnessing this and having it happen to them, which very clearly contradicts the ones who said that it doesn't happen anymore. Because truly, at its core, I think a lot of women just don't know that this is happening, and therefore we can't protect ourselves if we don't know what the dangers are. And another real implication of these findings is that if men called each other out, if men changed as a system in the way that they interact with each other, that would really benefit women. But one man making that effort is simply not enough. All men have to hold each other accountable if we are to actually cause some change. So I hope this was interesting to you. I know it was a little bit of a shorter video because, like I said, it's not the main bulk of my dissertation, but I hope that it was helpful to you. And if it was, please hit like or interact with the video, as it would really help this get recommended to other people as well. And I'll see you next week.